Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, frequent listeners and viewers of our podcast know that throughout 2024, we've talked with leaders from both within and outside the RSPA member community about their leadership journeys and what they've learned along the way. Now, this will be one of those ventures outside of our industry. Our guest, who will join us in a moment, is Bob Chapman, the chairman and CEO of Barry-Wehmiller, a $3.6 billion global capital equipment and engineering solutions company with more than 12,000 employees. Among Bob's accolades are being named CEO of the Year by the Society for Human Resource Management, known as SHRM. Bob's also been named the #3 CEO in the world by Inc. magazine and a top 10 social capital CEO by International Business Times. He's grown Barry-Wehmiller from $20 million in revenue and a weak financial position to where it is today. And again, at $3.6 billion, that's 180 times larger than when he first took over. And he's done that through what he calls truly human leadership, a people-centric approach where team members feel valued, cared for, and integral to the company's purpose. Now, I got to know Bob through his Wall Street Journal bestseller book, Everybody Matters: The Extraordinary Power of Caring for Your People Like Family. The part of his book that really resonated with me is a section called Beyond Self-Interest: An Ethical Foundation for Capitalism, and that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. Now, before we talk ethical capitalism, let's be capitalists and thank our sponsors who make the RSPA community and all its activities and this podcast possible. Do you like how I blended that right in there? Seamless transition. Our platinum sponsor is Blue Star. Our gold sponsors are CoCard, Epson, Heartland, and ScanSource. And also, we want to remind you that registration is now open for Inspire 2025, the Retail IT Channel's premier leadership conference. RSPA Inspire is set for January 26th through 29th in Curacao. For more information, visit gorspa.org/inspire so you can experience networking nirvana. Last thing I'll say before we welcome Bob to the podcast, the power of the RSPA community is sharing wisdom, sharing ideas, sharing insights. I wouldn't have come across Bob's book if it wasn't recommended to me by an RSPA member, Jeremy Julian of CBF's North Star. He recommended Everybody Matters, and that led to this podcast today. So thank you, Jeremy Julian, for the assist on today's podcast. All right, I hope you enjoy our conversation today with Bob Chapman. Bob, so great to have you. Welcome to the Trusted Advisor. Thanks for making time to talk with our members today.
I appreciate this opportunity to share our message with your audience.
Great. And so, as I said at the outset, the focus today is going to be on ethical capitalism. And so one passage from your book really jumped out to me. And it says, early capitalism was rooted in Judeo-Christian morality. Capitalism lost its ethical foundation and became strictly amoral, not immoral, making no reference to doing the right thing for the right reasons. Any sphere of human activity that touches other humans must have a moral/ethical foundation. Otherwise, it drifts towards objectification and exploitation. Now, that approach is far different today from the attitude that most people hold, right? They say it's just business, right, as a justification for their actions. So can you expand on the concept for us that business has an ethical foundation?
Let me go back a second, and because I talk about this a lot. I had a chance to talk at Brown University to university presidents, and I went up to Harvard in advance and I said, what is the purpose of education in our country? And they said, well, the founding fathers felt we needed an informed citizenry to have a democracy. I said, okay. And I thought a minute, I said, then Henry Ford came along in the Industrial Revolution, one of the pioneers in the Industrial Revolution. And he said to our universities, I need skills. I need accountants. I need engineers. I need marketing people. I need lawyers. And we'll pay them well, and give them good benefits. And so the Industrial Revolution was seen as an extremely positive evolution of capitalism, which created communities, with better education, really benefited society, and we've seen that all over the world. But as I looked at it, it forgot one key thing. It assumed that money would create happiness, okay? That the economic benefits of a better paying job, not Benny Starn crops or, or animals, but people came off the farms in China and America, went into jobs where they were paid better with good benefits, that we would have the society we all dreamed of with economic prosperity, which would lead to human prosperity. But unfortunately, a century later, we have the most prosperous economy driven by the Industrial Revolution, and we have the highest level of depression, anxiety, and suicide we've ever had. Why? Because we thought in this Judeo-Christian mortality that success was related to money, wealth, okay, and education. And education created success because the better your education, the better the job, the more the money you make. And so it began with a false assumption that money would create happiness, okay? And we attribute the benefit of the Industrial Revolution to the wealth created and the advancement of societies to more civilized societies. But when great pioneers like Henry Ford came along, they thought that paying people well with good benefits was the barter that they had with humanity that would benefit it. But Henry Ford did not say to our universities, as we gather together in these larger and larger organizations, we need to make sure we have leaders who see people as their purpose. Okay. And unfortunately, it was seen as money is the purpose to create economic wealth. So that's where it went wrong. We thought money would create happiness. Okay. And logically, with better healthcare, with better standards of living, it would, but we didn't teach our business leaders to care. We taught them to use people to achieve financial success. Okay. And that has driven businesses in my entire career. That has driven business is organic growth, share price improvement, market share. And we thought by paying people well with good benefits, we had a good trade-off in society. And that's the problem. It nobody was taught to care about people. They were taught to care about creating financial wealth that they thought would create happiness. That was where the link failed.
Got it. Like almost the attitude of, hey, I'm paying them every 2 weeks, and it's a good wage. I can use them and do whatever I want. Like run them into the ground, and as long as they're getting that money for it, that's a fair trade.
Yeah. So Jim, in my education, I have an accounting degree and an MBA from Michigan. I went to Price Waterhouse, then I've run a manufacturing company for several decades. The lens through which I saw people through my education and then my experience in the world, I saw people as functions for my success. I needed them to be successful. Okay. I was a nice guy. We had a nice company, but I saw people and I introduced them as engineers, accountants, etc. And that's the way I was taught. And I was never taught that the way I would run Barry Waymiller would affect people's marriage, their health, and their relationship with the children. But when we began to realize that we needed to transform managers into leaders to truly care about people, and we started teaching at our university how to become a leader, not a manager, this astounded me, 95% of the feedback we got is how to change their marriage and their relationship with their children. Yep. So I realized that business could be the most powerful force for good in the world if we had leaders who had the skills and courage to care. And the challenge is that when COVID was an issue, it was highly contagious, okay? The good news about caring, it's even more contagious than COVID. What we have found, we did not know this, what we have found is when people feel cared for, it releases in them the capacity to care for others.
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard to care for others when you don't feel cared for yourself. And Tom Friedman nailed it. And to your audience, I think it's a perfect way to see it. We don't, more than a poverty of money in this world, we have a poverty of dignity. And when people don't feel cared for, they feel used. It creates a sense of humiliation. And when they feel humiliated, you'll see anger and unrest like you've never seen before. What are we seeing in our society, in this prosperous economic society? So the Industrial Revolution forgot one thing, the human revolution.
Yes.
We needed to see people. I was interviewed by Washington University organizational development professors a few years ago. And after an hour and a half interview, they said, "You're the first CEO we have ever interviewed that never talked about your product." And I paused a minute and I said, "I've been talking about our product for the last hour and a half. It's our people."
Yes.
I won't go to my grave proud of the machinery we build. I'll go to my grave proud of the people who did that. It caught them completely off guard because we define our focus on customers, our focus on profitability, and we take the people that we have the privilege of leading as functions for our organizational goals. And this is not, remember, I speak in every part of society. I see it in nonprofits, I see it in the military, I see it in government, I see it in healthcare, I see it in business. We don't have leaders. We have good Christian people with good intentions, but they were never taught to care. They were taught to use people to achieve and rewarded by using people to advance the purpose of the org, not caring for people.
Yes. Yeah. And I'll say, so thank you for that. One thing that was very formative for me in my management leadership career, I used to work for a publishing company, about 100 employees, and they went to do their first ever training session for managers because I think a lot of the sales reps especially felt like they were being, more manipulated than they were actually, had a partnership with their manager. We're supposed to start the training like at 9 a.m. We're all waiting out in the hallway. The owner's in there with the folks who were leading it, and he didn't start it for 20 minutes. And then finally we get in there and the owner starts off big in all caps written on the marker board, actually care. And he said, all these things, these tactics we're going to treat you are just going to be tricks and manipulative tools if you don't actually care. Like it starts there. And if you don't actually care, don't be a manager, right? Don't be a leader. That's not what we're looking for. And boy, did that really change the trajectory of how our managers worked with employees. And then you started seeing managers years later getting feedback to your point of, hey, he not only makes me a better salesperson, this manager makes me a better person, makes me a better husband, makes me a better father, a better teammate. And you're like, wow, that is so much more meaningful than did we hit our Q2 numbers? But it all roots back. And like I said, that's always burned into my brain. All caps, actually care up on that whiteboard. That sounds like that's what you're saying.
That's exactly what we're saying. But remember when Bernie Sanders was a possible presidential candidate in the Democratic Party, he talked a lot about socialism, and surveys showed that young people were actually interested in socialism. And it was interesting to stand back and look at this disconnect between caring, because we have never learned to care. And so the CEO roundtable, America's top CEOs, some really wonderful gentlemen, good Christian, good family men, came out with a PR statement to defend free enterprise. And they said in this full page Wall Street Journal article, we need to think about more than just the shareholders. That was the essence of the message. Now, A, it's sad they needed to say that.
Right.
Okay. And B, I know some of these gentlemen, they have no idea how to care. What we have learned is you cannot ask people to care. You can't ask people to speak Chinese or German. You have to teach them how. Caring is a skill, it's a language. And so in our university, that's in hindsight, that's what we unintentionally did. So again, you use the word manager. To me, that should be struck from the American language, because the word manager means, in my view, the manipulation of others for your success. Leadership is the stewardship of the lives you have the privilege of leading. A dramatically different lens created by leadership. Again, we have bosses, supervisors, managers. Who wants to be? I always said I took a management class, got a management degree, and I got a job in management. And I thought my job was to manage people. Name anybody in your life you can manage.
Right.
Name anybody in your life that wants to be managed. We need mentors, coaches, leaders, people who see people as their purpose. Okay. But I want to go back to your statement here. We describe it as people, purpose, and performance. The first word is people. Our fundamental responsibility to the people we have the privilege of leading, that gives them a sense of safety, a sense of future, so they can plan their lives, they can count on the organization to provide for their future, and then we've got on a purpose that inspires them. We want to inspire people, not just manage people, because people will share their gifts with you when they feel inspired. Okay. And then performance. If we've got to create value. If we don't create value, we put at risk our stewardship of the people whose lives. So if our investors lose confidence in us, okay, we compromise our ability to be good stewards of people's lives. And so it's, again, people, purpose, and performance. Starts with our focus on people around a purpose that inspires them, and we have to create value, human and economic value, to have the right to stay in existence as an organization. I always say, some people say it's about getting the right people on the bus. I say it's about building a safe bus, which is your business model, and having leaders who know how to drive that bus and know where they're going. And then anybody you invite on that bus is going to be fine, because you built a safe bus and you have leaders who know how to drive it safely. So it's incredibly important, both your business model, because if your business model fails, you're going to hurt people. Okay.
Yes.
And our goal is, so again, it's not just about caring for people. Part of the way you care for them as a parent is you provide income to educate and house and your family. So, and part of business is you've got to have a business that gives people a chance to create value and feel safe and valued and go home at night. Again, nobody ever told me that the way I would run Barry Wehmiller would affect people's health, people's marriage, and people's relationship with their children. But that is 95% of the feedback we get. And that is the power that any organization can be, as opposed to the organizational objectives. Our people is our purpose, making sure that those people in our care go home at night feeling valued. And we got to have a good business model that creates
Yeah.
value, and people need to relate to it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and it ties in the visual that I'll try to get managers out of my vernacular here, but that we would teach leaders, say it's not that you're on the other side of the table working against the person. They have to feel like you are sitting on the same side of the table with them, and you're figuring the issues out together to benefit the organization and to benefit them. It's not either or, right? It's got to be for both. So I want
Yeah.
to talk about one other passage in your book as well. You say it's imperative we reconnect markets and morals, and you said people and purpose ahead of profits is the first one, then the primacy of human flourishing overall, then the one I want you to expand on, it says morality ahead of money. And so I'm thinking that last point might give our audience some pause, or oh good, yeah, people, and all that stuff. But boy, morality ahead of money. Can you talk about how placing morality ahead of money has paid off for you, for your people, for your community?
Well, I don't want to use the word paid off for me, because that would
Okay.
imply that I did it for my benefit. Okay.
Okay.
I would say to you, and it's not that people are more important than profit. The way we express it is creating economic and human value in harmony. Okay. In harmony. Okay. Not one at the expense of the other. Okay. And so I would say to you that, again, it depends upon how you look. Again, I know a lot of wonderful people who in business, you know, don't know how to embrace their faith, their family values, and business. And I use the statement Simon Sinek, and I say parenting and leadership is identical. What is parenting? The stewardship of these precious young lives that come into our family through birth, adoption, second marriage, that we all take incredibly seriously. What is leadership? The stewardship of these precious people who walk in our building every day, who simply want to know they matter. Okay. That is a view I never heard. I was never taught. I was never rewarded for. And I guarantee you boards don't talk about that. Okay. Because it's not the language of business. The language of business is numeric. Okay. And our goal is for business to be a pound. Remember, we have people in our care for 40 hours a week. We will dramatically impact their health and the way they go home at night feeling about themselves. And when they go home at night feeling good about themselves, they're better spouses, they're better parents, and we could heal this poverty of dignity we're feeling in our country because we have managers and bosses and supervisors who use people to achieve organizational goals. That's where the immorality begins. It's not that these aren't good people. They were never taught, never rewarded, never advanced in their career because they were good stewards of people. They achieved results and they were promoted because they achieved results. Again, not bad people, but the foundation of the Industrial Revolution, we thought by creating better paying jobs with better benefits, we were benefiting society. Okay, nice, but how did you validate their worth?
Yes.
By the way we paid them? Nope.
No.
By the way you treated them.
Yes.
Okay. When were unions formed? In the very early days, because we didn't know, we used people, I'll put on a hubcap every 15 seconds. Now I want you to do it in 13 seconds.
Right.
And I'll find an automation system. So it was never about human dignity or human worth. It was about economic. That's where the Industrial Revolution and business failed. It didn't see the potential to validate the worth of every individual for them to become who they're intended to be, whether that was whatever it was, but that they felt valued and they went home at night, and we could heal a lot of this brokenness we feel in the world.
No, thank you for that. And let me ask, I'll get to some of the things that our leaders in our organization have to deal with on a regular basis. So, like talking to an employee who isn't performing up to expectations, right? What is the way to value them? Like, what's the moral way to manage them through the process of what could be called get good or get gone, right? What is the way to value them while at the same time you got a business to run, right? In terms of it can't just be like, hey, you're a nice person, I value, but you're not up to speed, and we're not delivering the product. What is the way to do that from your perspective, Bob?
Well, first of all, it's appalling to think get good or get gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Would you say that to your kids?
No.
Okay. Why would you say that to somebody else's kids? Okay. So let me start with that is a immoral way to treat people. Get
Okay.
and get gone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what you've asked, I get is either the top one or two questions I get from whether it's a church group or a nonprofit or healthcare. And basically you're saying, what do you do about the people that don't get it? And I say, treat them like you would like your son or daughter treated if they didn't get it. They say, well, that would be different. I say, why is it different? That's somebody's son you're talking to. And the standard of care is treat people no less than you would want your son or daughter treated or you to be treated. And when in parenting, we're taught it's called hard love. Sometimes the best thing you can do with an individual who needs to hear the impact they're making on others and the need to improvement is consequences. We're taught in raising kids consequences thoughtfully, developed. The appropriate consequence is a way to help kids feel the implications of doing things wrong. Okay, the consequences. So I would say to you that we just bring hard love, which means doing the right thing for the person. And sometimes when somebody is and I don't like to use the word not performing to our expectations, because quite often, remember, most people don't feel valued. Remember, 65% of all people would give up a salary increase if they could fire their boss. So why would people perform in an environment where they're abused, not respected? As one person said, I got 10 things right and I never heard a word. I got one thing wrong and got my ass
Right.
chewed. Okay.
Yes.
So why would people share their gifts with you fully in an environment where they don't feel valued? And so I would say to you, is that person not performing because they're not capable, or is it because your leadership style does not inspire them to share their gifts with you? So it's a two-way street. It's not just looking at the people that don't perform, okay, any more than raising kids. How do we deal with kids that we know are not realizing the potential? We inspire them, okay? But sometimes consequences are the right thing to do to help them realize the implication of their behavior. So my standard of care is treat them no less than you would want your son or daughter treated.
Yeah, I thank you for that. And so let me ask this, and again, I'm running a lot of this through my own personal lens, my personal experience. When I first started in my professional, management leadership career, is at the same time I was coaching it was my little brother, and actually right before, in fifth and sixth grade basketball. And boy, the parallels between those were super helpful for me because you would see a coach, like I'm not a yeller, screamer, berater, anything like that. I would make sure the kids have fun, and right, you would make sure you teach them. And if a kid screws up, you're like, well, they probably don't know how to do it. They need more practice, right? Let's just go emphasize on the practice. You'd see other people flipping out and getting mad at them. And I'm like, man, what a parallel that is to the workplace, right? People aren't bringing good ideas. Well, because you're screaming at them, right? If they do something that doesn't exactly align with what you do. So I guess, can you talk about that? Do you see more parallel? Again, I was, I talked with one of my managers about that learning experience, and they're like, do not bring up coaching kids to managing people. They're not the same thing. People will feel insulted. I'm like, it's actually been like instructive for me personally. So I guess, can you talk about that in terms of, does that build upon what you said, or am I
Yeah,
misunderstanding?
in the early days of this journey, we compared John Wooden of UCLA with Bobby
Yeah.
Knight of Indiana.
Okay.
And Bobby, both winning coaches, okay? But Bobby Knight would run up and down screaming at the players, throwing a chair,
And a referee. Yep.
constantly screaming and yelling. And John Wooden would sit down on the bench with his program rolled up and let his players play.
Hmm.
Okay, which team would you rather play on? Okay. And John Wooden was the most winning coach in college basketball. And that reminds me of another quick story. A gentleman named Steve Jones contacted our operation in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He's a high school football coach. And he said, I read Mr. Chapman's book. I'd love to read him. So I said, well, one day when he's visiting Green Bay, we'll let you know and you can come and visit him. So I sat down with Steve Jones, and he talked about how much the book meant to him. Again, a high school football coach in Kimberly, Wisconsin. And I said to him, well, Steve, the only problem I've got with sports is we have winners and we have losers. How do you coach, in this case, high school football, young men about winning and losing? And he said something to me I will never forget. He said, we don't talk about winning and losing. We talk about play your position well for your fellow team member. Mm-hmm. And they won 72 games in a row and 5 out of 6 state championships. I always thought when I came to the business that you played your position well for your career, for your advancement, for your salary improvement, for your advance. It never occurred to me to look at Bill or Mary either side of me and say, I want to make sure that I do my position well so that Bill and Mary have a future too. And that was powerful. We actually had Steve record how he talked to these high school kids, and we showed it to our leadership team. If everybody would step into their role in our company and felt inspired to share their gifts fully so that their fellow colleagues had a future, it would be the ideal organization of vibrancy. Mm-hmm. So I would say to you, coaching and leadership is identical. Okay, it's identical. And my son Kyle was a star basketball player, football player, and baseball player in high school, and big 3-point shooter. And he was thinking about his career, and I said, Kyle, business and sports are just alike. You got offense, you got defense, you got play patterns, and you got a scoreboard. You just don't get hurt as much. And I would say to you that I use the analogy of sports. There's no difference in coaching a football team and running a business organization. You have players and positions. You have play patterns. You understand how the other team's game, so you can play your game against their game, and and you have the scouts looking at seeing what's happening and adjusting your game. That is the same as business. It's identical. And coaches is what people want. They don't want bosses, supervisors, managers, foremen. They want somebody that inspires them and cares for them.
Yes, and so a couple things. First, John Wooden, my favorite coach of all time. I have in the bookshelf behind me many, many Wooden books. I have no Bobby Knight books. I want to point that out. And Wooden would go out of his way to never talk about winning. He would always talk about be the best you can be. Here's the best way to put on your socks. Here's the best way to do these things. And sure enough, that led to, like you said, multiple national championships. I guess I'll also share with you just to emphasize your point about coaching and leadership. So I was a walk-on for college basketball for a school in Erie, Pennsylvania. I would still go to their games. I did broadcasting for a while, but after broadcasting, I would always sit right behind the other team's bench just to observe how their coaches interacted with their players. 90% of them were very adversarial, screaming, yelling, yanking them out of the game, just no partnership whatsoever. But man, the best coaches were the one who were very much deliberative. Let's bring somebody out of a game. Let's talk to them, teach them, right? It's not that they never raised their voice, but they were clearly in more of the coaching, teaching mode than they were the berating mode. So again, I know that's not like scientific or anything, but I'm telling you, it was
What's
really,
the
really
difference in
evident.
business?
I know
Most
it. Yeah.
people I see in business scream and berate.
Yeah.
Remember, 88% of all people feel they work for an organization that does not care about them. Okay.
Yep.
There's a 20% increase in heart attacks on Monday mornings when people have to go back to work. We have a society where we live in is called TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Get the hell out of this place and kill the pain with the beer. I imagine a day, as you'll see, that we have TGIM. Thank goodness it's Monday. Get away from the kids, the spouse, and be with a group of people I enjoy playing this sport with. There's no difference in the ideal world between a coach and a leader, okay? Or a mentor, somebody who inspires us, okay? But we got to have play patterns. It's not just inspiration. If you just inspire, but you got to have play patterns. You got to know how to play against your competition. And again, it's about looking for the goodness in the people and recognizing. So remember, the three key things we teach that move you from management to leadership is we teach empathetic listening, okay, how to listen without judgment, to validate the worth of others, which is the greatest of all human skills at home, at work, in your community. Then we teach recognition and celebration, which came from Cynthia and my experience raising 6 kids. If you don't spend 5 times more complimenting your kids on what they do right, it's harder for them to deal with what they could do better. And I find adults are identical, but we don't teach that. We teach people, as you said, I got 10 things right and I didn't hear a word and I got one thing wrong, got I asked you that. And then we teach culture of service. How do you move from a me-centric world to a we-centric world where people think of others, not just themselves? Those are the 3 things we teach, because you can't ask people to be a leader. Okay, you may work for somebody who's a great leader, you may learn from them, but we don't want leadership to be an accident. Okay, you don't want to hope that you got a good doctor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You want to make sure he's trained to be a good doctor. You don't want to hope you got a good pilot on the plane you just stepped your foot on. You want to make sure they have the disciplines. So leadership is a privilege. It is a sense of responsibility. So allow people to come together, share their gifts, and go home at night feeling valued. And we could heal this anxiety, depression, and suicidal behavior we have in this country that is built upon economic success is happiness, as opposed to caring for others, which is true success.
Yes. And I have a couple more questions and a couple more quotes in the book, but one thing I want to just share and maybe tie all these points together. So talking about how the parallel with coaching, I worked down the hallway for a few years in a small office park from a psychotherapist. So when I first talked to her, I'm like, I know nothing about psychotherapy. And she's like, I know nothing about business whatsoever. But the more that we talked, it was like our jobs were very similar in terms of we have people, we care about them, we're learning about them, right? We're teaching them different, the knowledge, the skills, things of that nature. We're putting our arm around them, guiding them, and our goal is to get them better so they can have better lives and improve their lives. And so it was just funny. The more conversations we had with each other, we're like, okay, we come at it from completely different angles, but it's essentially the same thing. So again, I still don't think I know anything about psychotherapy, but it seems like there's that same foundation and the
Well,
same through line with it.
in my talks, I say that I talk quite often to CEOs of companies, and I say, you're all worried about the cost of healthcare. You are the problem. 74% of all illnesses are chronic. The biggest cause of chronic illness is stress, and the biggest cause of stress is work. So we are basically destroying the health of our team members because we don't know how to validate their worth, to reduce stress, which causes so many of the issues we face in health issues we face, heart attacks, strokes, etc. So again, we need this profession of that lady psychotherapist because we have so much brokenness. We're creating infinite demand. And remember, the other thing I'd say reminds me, we have a society where we celebrate people who write checks to charity. What a wonderful family they just gave to the Cancer Society or the homeless, etc. The greatest act of charity is not the checks you write. The greatest act of charity is how you treat the people you have the privilege of leading at home, at work, and in your community. We need the charities to fix the brokenness we are creating because we don't know how to care for each other.
Yes. Yes. Bob, one more question for you. Thanks so much for your time today. And so you end this section about an ethical foundation for capitalism in your book on a positive note. So we're going to make sure we end this podcast on a positive note and what business leaders can do. So the quote says, business can be the primary vehicle for building a better world if we appropriately respect and care for people. Business is a powerful instrument that we must use to serve the noble cause of greater human and planetary flourishing. So I guess, do you see the role of a leader to be not just an evangelist for their brand, but also for high character behavior and high character treatment of people?
Well, I'd flip it. So the primary responsibility of a leader is the care for the people they have the privilege of leading. Again, I doubt that many of the people listening to your podcasts were told when they had a chance to move into a leadership position, do you understand that we're giving you an opportunity to go from being part of the accounting department to leading the accounting department? Do you understand that the way you embrace this will profoundly affect the health and the family life of the people? And they say, oh, because we don't train people to do that, okay? So the chance for people to heal the power of business, and we use the word business, but again, I'm talking about hospitals, I'm talking about nonprofits, I'm talking about military. I speak in every part of society around the world, and the same issue is prevalent in every. We don't know how to care for each other. And then we have all these charities to fix the damage we do by using people. Okay. And so again, it astounds me in this journey that we basically were blessed with this vision of seeing people as our purpose, and now we need a good business model to be good to our people, and we need leaders. So again, I want your listeners to know that we saw a lot of really good family men, good Christians who were, I'll call it, unintentionally hurting the very people that they had the privilege of leading. And we said, why do we need to fix adults? Because our education system is around academic achievement, geography, math, science, marketing, business law, accounting, etc. But we're not giving people human skills. And we wonder why we see what we see in terms of the behavior of companies to lay off people, to send people home, feeling unvalued, because they were never taught to that. They were taught basic, academic skills without the compatible human skills to blend the two together to be good leaders. So we will not heal this society until our education system embraces its role in creating this broken model of economic achievement without human achievement. So we are very focused on now working with K through 12 education, so that by the time kids will leave our education, primary education system, graduate at 18, they're ready to go into society and live with diversity, live with unique people from around the world, okay, because we understand how to live together. Those are human skills that we found are teachable. And so that's the key that I want. Until we change education, it's kind of like putting band-aids on cancer. That is the issue we have. Education does not
Yeah.
prepare us to live together.
Yeah, and there's teaching, and there's also we talk about like education by immersion, and so like and maybe our listeners, when I talk to them afterwards, they can kind of vouch for this. People who come to our community events, our team is focused on not just hosting a trade show, but making sure that the people who are there feel valued, right? They feel like somebody personally cares about them, and they're looking to help them. And our hope is like that our community people can say, wow, this really feels good. This feels different from any other trade show or association or anything that I'm with. And that maybe, they can learn, have the knowledge and the skills, but also say, this is what it looks like and feels like, right? You know how you're feeling valued now? You can pass that along to other people. You can lead them towards that. So that's what it sounds like. There's a formal education, and there's also, if people experience it, then they can say, oh, I can do this for other people.
Yeah, I could teach you a lot about playing basketball, but until you get on the court and play it, it's hard. Until you apply that skill. So again, my concern is there's a lot of nice people who've run companies that say, look, that's a great example. And then they retire and somebody else is promoted and the company falls apart overnight because it's not sustainable. The only way we are going to have sustainable cultures like you just talked about is when our education system gives us those skills. We have learned, we didn't know this, but we have learned that you can teach people the skills of caring, both at work, at home, and in our communities. And when we do so, we see profound changes in human behavior and health and the world where everybody matters, okay? Not just the senior executives, success is not money, power, and possession. Success is living life fully with the gifts you have in service of others. And that's what I hope the message people get. Until we change education, we are not going to fix this issue. It's not sustainable. Again, it could be a nice individual like you who's blessed with this, but that's not going to heal the world. We need to change education to prepare people to become leaders at home, in our communities, and at work, where we see people as our purpose.
Yeah, we can't be subtle and cross our fingers and hope there's actual action that needs to take place. So, well, that does it for this episode of The Trusted Advisor. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. Before we go, big thanks again to Bob Chapman for sharing his wisdom with us today. Thanks also to RSPA Marketing Director Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the retail technology ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.